Hey, good morning. My name is Javier, and we'll be reviewing Puerto Rico's environmental challenges and organization collaborations throughout the last 2 decades. Okay, what's going on? Puerto Rico is a large tropical biome with several organism populations scattered across different ecosystems in the island. Right here we have the Puerto Rico's natural tropical rainforest reserve, where originally in 2006 it was taken upon the people to be fixed up and gated off so hunting and deforestation was not allowed, and preserved a solid 10% of Puerto Rico's natural habitat. And here we have one of the what's considered a lettuce coral reef. This was one of the most popular coral reefs that's found across Puerto Rico, and it's been rehabilitated to host, take care, and protect several fish, eels, sharks, and etc. from other dangers in the ocean. What are Puerto Rico's main ecological regions? So we have, as stated before, El Yunque Tropical Rainforest, which is now considered a national park accessible to the people. It has inclusively within it 4 waterfalls, 3 trails, one of the trails leading to the very top of the point, which is approximately about an hour hike. And at that point, you're able to visit what's a small base that was originally placed on top of the natural rainforest that has been discontinued and now a sightseeing place where you can take several pictures and enjoy the view. Puerto Rico is surrounded by several coral reefs, mainly found on the southwest and all across the south of Puerto Rico. And it's a big part of the ocean, considering that it on the ocean bed it covers a solid, I want to say 25% of Puerto Rico's surrounding water. Beach beds contain a lot of natural resources, inclusively for sea turtles, crabs, and we have several spawning beds for sea turtles because originally there was a lot of human interaction between sea turtle nests, and we have from this point on have closed off human access to these areas. Inclusively, this allows these sea turtles to find their way to the ocean and find natural seaweed grass beds that are nearby. These seagrass beds are responsible for maintaining and and allowing mangroves to regain a lot of nutrition and allow several organisms to prosper and feed what is one of Puerto Rico's most popular animals, the manatee. Lagoons, including the bioluminescent bay, is one of Puerto Rico's most popular tourist sites and one of Puerto Rico's, well, in across the world, it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the world because it is glowing water due to an organism called a dinoflagellate, which performs a oxidized chemical reaction that allows them to give off a blue glow. And Puerto Rico holds 2 of the strongest bioluminescent bays in the world. This allows scientists and marine biologists to actually study wave patterns and ocean tracking of chemicals because near to Puerto Rico, we have 2 popular tourist attractions, which is Isla de la Culebra and Isla de Beldes. And usually the Parguera, or what is now known as the strongest bioluminescent island in the world, is located here. A lot of these islands carry unnecessary amounts of gasoline and alcohol through the ocean currents and is brought upon to the bioluminescent bay, and these dinoflagellates actually stop growing within these bays, and it is our job to actually protect and maintain control over the bioluminescence to preserve it and allow animals and other beings to use it as a natural source of light. Right here around this flower, we actually find the Puerto Rico's tropical rainforest reserve. And all across this region is what I talked about earlier, where you can find several coral reefs and actually find a lot of companies allowing you to snorkel, scuba dive, and tour these coral reefs safely by boat. And nowadays, a lot of these boats are actually just by sailing, so no more gasoline is allowed in certain regions to preserve these natural corals that are very sensitive to outside resources, aside from ocean water, of course. So the biggest ecological projects that have happened since the year 2000 is the tropical rainforest restoration, manatee protection laws. Long Since 2005, manatees have been very prone to live in several shallow areas of Puerto Rico where a lot of boats actually park by, and even something as a kayak can cause a lot of damage if you accidentally bump into a manatee. And these protection laws reassure that manatees have a safe area to live in and allows them to have natural water that's not affected by any chemicals, gasoline, or anything that just shouldn't be there. These Both the marine protection laws and coral reef plankton were actually instituted by Puerto Rico's natural gas plant Ecoelectrica, which also has a big biology program for marine biologists and on land biology. And they've took incentive to actually replant corals that have been killed off by essentially unpurified ocean water that's been affected by gasoline or trash being dumped into the ocean. And keeping these corals safe allow us to have extravagant clean water compared to other oceans across the world. The biggest project since 2011, as of right now in Puerto Rico, was the Guardians of Maria Langa. Maria Langa is a very small island located in the southwest region of Puerto Rico. uh, it originally was a small tourist attraction that was mainly just for partying, but since then it was abandoned and left to be populated by rats, crabs, and covered in many pounds of trash. The Guardians of Malanga, as said, was drafted in 2011 and took action in 2013, and is one of the most important ecological revitalization projects Puerto Rico's had in the last decade. The goal of this project was to clean, repair, and reintroduce the island to the public to be used as a form of marine biology study, because this island is allowed several generations of sea turtles, several generations of birds, and several generations of crabs to live upon it, and allow them a safe haven from other humans that either want to sell, capture, or otherwise harm these beings. So this project had 5 major steps. The first part of the project was data gathering and ecological assessment. It was pretty severe. Marialanga had a lot of trash laid upon it, and it was completely infested by rodents, mainly just rats. But it made a large population, and these rats were harming crabs, getting into sea turtle nests, eating their eggs, and also harming a lot of birds on the island. This is the natural gas plant, also known as Ecoelectrica. They have since then expanded, but they have inclusively added a whole biology program that allows them to cover this whole area and protect both Marialanga and the surrounding islands, and do several research by droning, water testing, water purification, and water preservation to these islands. 3 major things that needed to be covered during this project was cleaning um, animal control, and preservation of Maria Langa. This was a very big project that was out of the hands of Ecoelectrica, and so they took incentive to gather the help of fishermen, stakeholders, and other organizations to take on with this project and clean up the whole island. A lot of these fishermen were all interviewed, and they all put in their personal opinion to this island Marialanga, and a lot of this trash during storms flows off into the water and actually uh, denies them the ability to fish in these regions because a lot of this trash still could have things in it and actually may killed off a lot of the aquatic life around the island. Development of the plan was came down to three stages, as said previously. So trash cleanup, animal control, and basically returning the island to its original state and turning it into a biological aquatic preservation program for studies and learning. Uh, within the first step, clean the island. As you can see right here in this boat, several trash bags were gathered, and as you can see here, several things from the mainland can flow off and end up either in these water currents in the coral reefs or even within the mangroves of the island. This took several weeks, and even to this day, the Gardens of Maralanga go every year to make sure the island is in good condition and clean up any trash that might have flown to the mangroves or the island. Because surprisingly enough, they still get bags upon bags. Like this is one of hundreds of trips they had to make for trash cleanup. The second biggest problem was the rat population that was on the island. The rats were terrorizing all the other organisms, ravaging through the trash, and basically destroying the island as it was. A company from Europe was actually took part in this project to essentially sell traps that would humanely kill the rats and be able to dispose of them. And it was through a high pressurized piston system that delivered a fatal blow to the upper cranium. A small problem though with this trap system, there were 7 traps total set up across Marialanga to approximately try to remove about 60% of the rat population. Unfortunately, throughout the first couple of weeks, the traps were also hurting and killing hermit crabs that were trying to get into the traps because the traps are usually packed with a puck of food to attract these rats. So they installed these metallic plates that basically made it so the trap had a slide and made it much harder for the crabs to get into. Engagement of stakeholders in project implementation was essentially just picking up trash, making sure all these mangroves and trees were in good condition, if anything need to be removed, replanted, or if they needed to reintroduce organisms, including grass and seagrass to the region. This space was also geared towards enrollment and training of local high school and university students and other community members so that they participate in the implementation of plan activities. And the purpose of this phase of the plan was to basically gain the required knowledge and experience to become project owners. A lot of these stakeholders from either adults or high school and university students either want to work in the business world or in the biological world and want to study how to manage, observe, and reorganize and stage a project in future environments. Project stewardship by stakeholders. This long-term goal involves the transition of the project leadership to local community to facilitate project success to the community. And this essentially meant that every single year, Marialanga takes several trips to the island and the surrounding regions to do testing and research on how the island is progressing, rehabilitating, and how it's reintroducing several species to the island, inclusively back in 2016, sea turtles were actually reintroduced to the island and were able to actually prosper and lay eggs and release a new sea turtles back into the ocean. Okay, so that was the Marialanga project. So Ecoelectrica in Puerto Rico also taken on several other projects. One of the big ones being the Caribbean Manatee Conservation Center. This was established, I believe, in 2015 and was developed because a lot of manatees were being hurt or left behind or interrupted in their natural habitat, and it's not safe for them. They're very gentle beasts. They're herbivores, and they need a lot of food, usually only found within mangroves and the lagoons. And these lagoons have been prone to a lot of tourism, and these companies can bring in boats that can either hurt them, release gasoline. A common chemical that is found in these mangroves and lagoons is DEET, a common chemical in mosquito spray, and it's very unhealthy to dinoflagellants, manatees, and all the organisms that are found within these areas. The goal of the Caribbean Manatee Conservation Center was to essentially give a home to these manatees that didn't have anywhere else to go and weren't able to grow up and learn the basics of survival within the ocean. And as you can see here, this is one of the longest members of Caribbean Manatee Conservation Center. He was just a child when brought in, as and for now has been a long-term member of the conservation center and has been a teaching aid to several kids, high schoolers, and university students to show how manatees can progress and grow in a controlled environment. Usually, they're fed once a day, and they do weekly teachings at this conservation center for students, where they teach you the basics of how to help manatees when found in the environment. Most importantly, manatees, as said, were gentle uh, sea cows of the ocean. They won't harm you, but at the same time, you should not be touching them. You should leave them alone. You can even take photography of them if seen in more transparent water, but keep your distance. Don't feed them. Don't give them any water outside from the water they already have, of course. And they also teach you about boating, where it's safer to just bring in boats that are either by sailing or by pedaling, including kayaking, and picking up after yourself and picking up within these regions. A lot of the times during these regions, you can't. Uh, a lot of these manatees can confuse trash as resources for food, because sometimes, depending on the lagoon they're living in, resources for natural seagrass might be scarce due to other outside resources killing off the grasses. Coral reef conservation and repair. As previously mentioned, coral reefs is a big part of Puerto Rico's natural marine biome. It surrounds almost the entire island. It is commonly seen throughout the south, and it is a popular tourist attraction for snorkelers, scuba divers, and so on. Ecoelectrica took a big part in conserving and repairing these coral reefs by essentially introducing several different species of coral reefs in either deeper regions farther out into the ocean, or in more shallower areas. They would put in uh, lettuce coral, sponge coral, and what's called a fire coral. This project is still an ongoing thing of maintaining and preserving these coral reefs and making sure no one is abusing the coral reefs by dumping gas, because coral reefs do a big part in filtering and maintaining the cleanliness of the water, and this water is used by thousands upon thousands of marine species to be used either as drinking water or as a place to live and hide and grow more of their population. Okay, so moving on to discussion questions. Our first question is, what would be some consequences and repercussions to the coral reefs if they're not taken care of for extended periods of time? So the biggest consequence that we see is that we see a big decrease in in species populations. We'll probably see a lot less sea urchins, a lot less fish, a lot less sharks, a lot less sea turtles getting to these areas because there's no real resources for them to use for themselves. What are some important improvement? What are some improvements that could be made for long-term terms for the gardens in Marialanga? Usually discussed in this project was including some form of protection plan to the island, because to this day it is a publicly open island. Anyone can come to the island, research, study it. It's not exactly the easiest to get to the island because you still have to get by boat. You can't simply swim to it. But it's been talked upon in the past to actually restrict it just for a research and study, and basically make it a safe haven for a lot of organisms, including sea turtles, to be able to grow, prosper, and reintroduce more sea turtles back into the ocean. And the final question is, what are some future outcomes that you believe would be set in place for the improvement and nourishment of Puerto Rico's environmental health? One thing to take into consideration: in 2017, Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico pretty heavily. Of course, a lot of it was most important that the people were safe, but other than that, a lot of the island's natural ecosystems were ravished and destroyed. And it took a lot of money and a lot of time, but Puerto Rico's natural rainforest started growing again. Companies like Ecoelectrica and other organizations started replanting coral reefs and maintaining them by introducing species among fish, crabs, and also natural seagrasses. And a lot of the islands like Vieques, Culebra, Marialanga, all these islands needed a lot of care to its natural ecosystem, including a lot of planting of what's considered common plants across Puerto Rico. And we took sections of Puerto Rico's tropical rainforest and used that to actually replant on these islands. That is all for now. Here are the resources that were used for this project. Furthermore, information can be found on the paper that was written.